It was a breezy fall afternoon in Foxborough, the kind of day that painted the town in hues of orange and gold. The faint aroma of freshly cut grass mingled with the distant sound of cheering fans. For most, it was just another game day. People strolled to the stadium, chatting about the upcoming season, grabbing hot dogs from vendors, and laughing as they found their seats. But for one small boy, this day was anything but ordinary. His name was Ethan, a 9-year-old with wide eyes and even bigger dreams. Standing near the gates, he clutched a football that looked almost comically large in his tiny hands. The boy's energy was palpable, his determination etched into every move he made. Ethan wasn't just there to watch the game or snag an autograph like the other kids gathered around. He had a mission. Today was the day he would meet his hero, Tom Brady, the man who had inspired him to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. But Ethan's plan didn't end at just meeting him. No, he had something to prove. In his room at home, late at night when the world was asleep, Ethan had been practicing a trick play. It wasn't just any play, it was his play, one he had designed with the hope that it might impress even the greatest quarterback of all time. Day after day, he had perfected it, running the same motions over and over until his legs ached and his tiny arms could barely lift the ball. Now, standing in the shadow of Gillette Stadium, he felt the weight of his dream pressing down on him. A few curious onlookers had gathered, noticing his intense focus and the football held tightly against his chest. "You really think you're gonna meet Tom Brady?" one of them asked, half smiling. Ethan looked up, his face calm but filled with a quiet confidence that seemed far too mature for his age. "I don't just think it," he replied. "I know it." The passerby chuckled, shaking his head. "Kid, Tom Brady doesn't have time for little kids like us." The word stung, but Ethan didn't let it show. He tightened his grip on the ball, staring straight ahead toward the stadium's entrance. He wasn't here to listen to doubters. He was here to make his dream come true. The morning had started just like any other in Ethan's small town. His mom had made pancakes shaped like footballs, a little tradition they shared before every big game. She knew how much her son adored the sport, though she often worried that his dreams were too big for such a small boy. "Are you sure you want to do this, Ethan?" she had asked as he packed his football into his backpack, carefully tucking it next to a hand-drawn diagram of his play. "I have to, Mom," he said simply, his voice steady. Tom Brady didn't get where he is by waiting around. He took chances. His mom smiled, though a hint of concern lingered in her eyes. Ethan was her little warrior, always chasing something bigger than himself. But this? Meeting Tom Brady? It felt impossible. As they drove to Foxborough, Ethan stared out the window, watching the scenery blur past. In his mind, he was already imagining how the day would unfold. He would find a way to get Brady's attention, show him the trick play, and maybe just maybe Brady would see something special in him. When they arrived, the stadium loomed like a fortress, its towering walls making Ethan feel even smaller than he already was. But instead of feeling intimidated, he felt his determination grow stronger. He stood by the gates for hours, watching fans stream in. Some stopped to take selfies, others hurried inside, eager to claim their seats. But Ethan didn't move. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking for any sign of the man he admired most. A security guard noticed the boy standing so still and walked over. "Hey there, little guy," the guard said, kneeling to meet Ethan's gaze. "You waiting for someone?" "Tom Brady," Ethan said without hesitation. The guard chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, that's a tall order. He's a busy man, you know." "I know," Ethan replied. "But I just need 5 minutes. That's all." The guard gave him a sympathetic smile. "Well, good luck with that." As the hours passed, more people began to notice Ethan. Some admired his determination, snapping pictures and sharing them on social media with captions like "This kid believes in miracles." Others dismissed him, shaking their heads as they walked by. "Is he seriously waiting for Tom Brady?" a teenage boy whispered to his friends. "Yeah, good luck with that," another replied, rolling his eyes. But Ethan ignored them all. He wasn't here to win their approval. He was here for something much bigger. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Most of the fans had already gone inside, their cheers echoing faintly in the distance. Ethan's mom, who had been waiting nearby, walked over with a worried look. "Ethan," she said softly, "maybe we should go inside and watch the game. You've been out here all day." But Ethan shook his head. "Not yet, Mom. I can feel it. He's gonna come." Just as she opened her mouth to protest, a sleek black car pulled up to a side entrance. The doors opened, and a tall figure stepped out, surrounded by staff members and flashing cameras. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. It was him. Tom Brady. For a moment, Ethan froze. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. Every ounce of courage he had mustered was about to be tested. His mom placed a hand on his shoulder, sensing his nerves. "Go," she whispered. Ethan nodded, clutching his football tighter as he broke into a run. "Mr. Brady," he called out, his voice ringing through the crisp autumn air. Brady turned, his expression unreadable as he spotted the small boy running toward him. Security stepped forward, but Brady raised a hand, signaling them to stop. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Ethan came to a halt just a few feet away from the man he had idolized for as long as he could remember. His chest heaved with excitement and exhaustion, but his eyes never left Brady's. "Mr. Brady," he began, his voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with every word, "I've been waiting all day to meet you. I have something to show you. Please, just give me 5 minutes." For a moment, Brady said nothing. The cameras flashed, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Then, to everyone's surprise, the quarterback crouched down to the boy's level, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "All right, kid," he said. "You've got 5 minutes. Show me what you've got." Little did anyone know, this was the beginning of something neither of them would ever forget. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as Tom Brady's words sank in. He couldn't believe it, he was about to show his play to the greatest quarterback of all time. His hands tightened around the football as he stared up at Brady, his idol standing right there, larger than life. But those 5 words, "show me what you've got," echoed in his head, and he knew there was no time to freeze up now. The onlookers, who had been casually dismissing Ethan moments earlier, were now captivated. Phones came out, cameras clicked, and whispers turned into murmurs of curiosity. Everyone was asking the same question: what is this kid about to do? Ethan took a deep breath, stepping back to create enough space. "Okay," he said, his voice still shaking a little, but steadied by his resolve. "This is a trick play I came up with. I call it the switch." Brady raised an eyebrow, folding his arms across his chest. The slight smirk on his face said he wasn't entirely convinced, but he was intrigued enough to watch. His assistants stood behind him, exchanging glances, clearly wondering why their boss was humoring this little boy. Ethan started his demonstration, his tiny feet shifting as he mimicked a quarterback's stance. His movements were deliberate, almost theatrical, but they carried a level of focus that caught Brady's attention. Ethan began to explain. "First, the quarterback fakes a handoff to the running back, but it's not a normal fake. The running back cuts sharply to the right, drawing the defense. Meanwhile, the quarterback spins left, but instead of keeping the ball, he tosses it backward to the wide receiver, who's already in motion." Ethan's hands moved swiftly as he described each step, illustrating with precise gestures. His small frame seemed to swell with confidence as he spoke, as if the play he was explaining held the power to rewrite the rules of football itself. And the key, Ethan continued, his voice gaining strength, is that the wide receiver doesn't throw the ball forward. He laterals it back to the quarterback, who's already sprinting upfield. The defense won't see it coming because they'll think the quarterback is out of the play. Brady tilted his head, his expression shifting from amused curiosity to genuine interest. He uncrossed his arms, leaning forward slightly as Ethan finished his explanation. The crowd had grown silent now, every eye fixed on the boy with the oversized football. And then, Ethan concluded, holding the ball up as if it were a trophy, the quarterback takes it all the way to the end zone. It's risky, but if everyone's in sync, it'll work. For a moment, there was silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Brady stood there, his face unreadable, as if he were processing the intricate details of Ethan's play. The boy's heart thumped in his chest. Had he blown it? Had he bored Tom Brady with too much detail? Then Brady straightened up, a slow grin spreading across his face. That's actually pretty clever, he said, nodding. Ethan felt a surge of pride, but before he could say anything, Brady held up a hand. But plays don't just work on paper or in the parking lot, he added with a playful smirk. You have to prove it on the field. The crowd erupted in murmurs again. Brady was challenging him. Ethan's eyes lit up. Does that mean we can try it? He asked eagerly. Brady chuckled, glancing at his assistants. Why not? The kid's got guts. He looked back at Ethan. But if we're gonna do this, we're doing it right. Come with me. Ethan's mom, who had been nervously watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. Wait, Mr. Brady, she said, her voice tinged with worry. Are you sure about this? He's only 9. Brady turned to her with a reassuring smile. Don't worry, ma'am. I'll take good care of him. Besides, he's got a fire in him. I want to see where it leads. With that, Brady motioned for Ethan to follow him. The boy's small legs moved quickly to keep up as they made their way toward the practice field. The crowd that had gathered outside began to follow, their curiosity piqued. Some of them whispered about how surreal it was to see a football legend giving his time to a random kid, while others joked that Ethan might be the next big thing. When they reached the field, Brady called over a few teammates who were warming up. These were men who towered over Ethan, their massive frames and sharp movements intimidating even from a distance. Ethan hesitated for a moment, his confidence wavering as he realized just how out of place he was. But then Brady knelt down to his level, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hey, he said, his voice calm and encouraging. Don't worry about them. You've got something special, and I can see it. Now show them what you've got. The players lined up, smirking slightly as they realized who their opponent was. One of them, a defensive lineman named Marcus, couldn't help but chuckle. Seriously, Tom. You're putting a kid up against us. Brady shot him a look. Don't underestimate him, Marcus. He's got heart. Let's see if we can keep up. The players exchanged amused glances but lined up anyway, curious to see what this tiny boy with the big football had in mind. Ethan stood in the middle of the field, clutching his ball. He glanced at Brady, who gave him a small nod. This was it, the moment he had dreamed about for months. Ready? Brady called out. Ethan took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. The whistle blew, and everything seemed to move in slow motion. Ethan launched into action, executing every step of his trick play with precision. The fake handoff, the spin, the lateral, it all happened so fast that even the professional players were caught off guard. Brady, who had taken the role of the quarterback in Ethan's play, sprinted down the field, catching the final lateral and dashing toward the end zone. The defenders scrambled to react, but by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Touchdown. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, the field erupted in cheers and laughter. Marcus, the defensive lineman who had doubted Ethan earlier, shook his head in disbelief. "Okay, kid," he said, walking over to ruffle Ethan's hair. "I take it back. You're legit." Ethan beamed, his chest swelling with pride. He turned to Brady, who was grinning down at him. "I told you it would work," Ethan said, his voice brimming with excitement. Brady laughed, shaking his head. "You sure did, kid. You sure did." As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the field, Ethan realized that this day had been everything he'd hoped for and more. Not only had he met his idol, but he had also earned his respect. Brady knelt down again, looking Ethan in the eye. "You've got something special, kid," he said. "Keep working hard, and don't let anyone tell you your dreams are too big." Ethan nodded, holding his football tightly. "I won't," he promised. Little did either of them know, this moment was just the beginning of an incredible journey that would change both their lives forever. Inside the sprawling halls of Gillette Stadium, Tom Brady was having one of those days, the kind that dragged and tested even the most focused of minds. The echoes of the morning press conference still rang in his ears, reporters firing questions faster than he could process. Questions about the team, his future, the inevitable whispers of retirement. It wasn't the kind of day that left much room for distractions. Brady had retreated to the training room, hoping for a moment of quiet. His playbook lay open on the table, a dozen annotated pages of potential strategies staring back at him. His assistant, Mark, hovered nearby, holding a clipboard and wearing a look of hesitation. Mark wasn't the kind to interrupt without reason, and Brady noticed the unease in his eyes. "What is it?" Brady asked without looking up. "There's a kid outside," Mark said, his voice measured. "Been standing there for hours, waiting to meet you." Brady frowned, shaking his head. "Mark, you know the policy. I can't meet with every fan who waits outside the stadium." "Not today." "I know," Mark replied, shifting his weight. "But this one's different. He's been standing there all day, holding a football almost as big as he is. Says he has something to show you." Brady leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Mark, I've got plays to finalize, coaches breathing down my neck, and the media ready to pounce on every decision I make. I don't have time for distractions." Mark hesitated, then added, "The kid reminds me of you, Tom. Back when you were just starting out. That fire in his eyes, you know what I'm talking about." Brady froze for a moment. The words hit deeper than he expected. Memories of his own childhood flashed in his mind, the days when he was just another kid with a dream, lugging a football through the streets of San Mateo, hoping someone would notice him. "Fine," Brady said at last, exhaling sharply. 5 minutes. No more." Ethan was led into the training area, his small frame dwarfed by the towering walls and rows of equipment. The sound of cleats on the floor echoed through the room, and the chatter of players and coaches seemed to stop as soon as he entered. The atmosphere was charged with tension, as if everyone was silently questioning why a 9-year-old had been allowed into their sacred space. Ethan didn't waver. His eyes locked onto Brady, who stood near the center of the room, arms crossed and a skeptical look on his face. To Ethan, Brady looked larger than life, a man who carried the weight of his team and his legacy on his shoulders. But to Brady, the boy looked impossibly small, almost fragile, in the midst of the bustling training area. Coaches exchanged glances, their whispers barely audible but clear enough to convey skepticism. "What's this about?" one of them muttered. "We don't have time for this." Brady's expression remained unreadable as he motioned for Ethan to step forward. "All right, kid," he said, his tone measured. "You've got 5 minutes. What's so important you've been standing outside all day?" Ethan clutched his football tighter, his knuckles white against the leather. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with determination. "Mr. Brady," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves coursing through him, "I want to show you a play that will change everything." Brady raised an eyebrow. "Change everything, huh?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said, nodding. The room erupted in low chuckles. One of the assistant coaches leaned over to Brady. "You really think this is worth your time?" Brady didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied Ethan, the way the boy's shoulders squared despite the obvious intimidation of the room. There was something about his posture, his unwavering gaze, that tugged at Brady's memory. It reminded him of himself during his first season, when every scout, every coach, and every analyst doubted his ability to play at the professional level. "Let him speak," Brady said finally, silencing the murmurs around him. Ethan stepped forward, holding his football out as if it were an offering. "This isn't just any play," he said. "I've been working on it for months. It's a trick play that can confuse the defense and create an opening for a quarterback to score. I call it the switch." The room fell silent again, though the skepticism lingered in the air. Brady tilted his head, gesturing for Ethan to continue. Ethan explained his play with the same precision and passion he had practiced at home. His small hands moved in sweeping gestures as he illustrated the movements of the players. His voice grew stronger as he outlined the fake handoff, the lateral, and the quarterback's sprint to the end zone. "And the defense won't see it coming because they'll think the quarterback is out of the play," Ethan concluded, looking up at Brady with a mixture of hope and determination. The room was quiet for a moment, the coaches and players exchanging doubtful looks. One of them, a burly linebacker named Travis, broke the silence with a low chuckle. "Kid, you've got guts, I'll give you that. But football's not just about fancy tricks. It's about discipline, strategy, and execution." Ethan met Travis's gaze, undeterred. "I know that," he said firmly. "But sometimes, a little creativity can make all the difference." Brady's lips curled into a faint smile. The kid had fire, no doubt about it. But there was still the matter of whether the play could work. "All right, Ethan," Brady said, stepping forward. "Let's see it in action." Ethan's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," Brady replied, his tone serious. "If you're going to talk about changing the game, you need to show us you can back it up." The tension in the room thickened as Brady motioned for a few players to join them on the field. The murmurs grew louder, some questioning the decision, others intrigued by what might happen next. "Tom," one of the coaches said quietly, "are we really doing this? We've got practice to run." Brady glanced over his shoulder. "Sometimes, it's worth taking a chance," he said simply. Ethan followed Brady out onto the practice field, the weight of 100 eyes on him. The players lined up, their towering frames making Ethan look even smaller than before. But he didn't flinch. Brady knelt down to Ethan's level, speaking quietly so only he could hear. "All right, kid. Show us what you've got. But remember out here, it's not just about the idea. It's about execution." Ethan nodded, his hands gripping the ball tightly. "I'm ready," he said. As the players took their positions, the tension reached its peak. Brady stepped into the quarterback's spot, signaling to Ethan to start the play. The boy's heart raced as he barked out the commands, his voice surprisingly strong for someone so small. The play unfolded exactly as Ethan had envisioned. The fake handoff, the lateral, the quarterback's sprint, it all came together in a seamless flow. The defenders scrambled to adjust, but by the time they realized what was happening, Brady was already in the end zone. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a ripple of applause spread through the field. Even the skeptical linebacker, Travis, gave a low whistle. "Not bad, kid," he said, nodding. Brady jogged back to where Ethan stood, a grin spreading across his face. "You've got something here," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Keep working on it, and who knows? Maybe one day, we'll see you running this play in the NFL." Ethan's face lit up, the weight of the moment sinking in. For the first time, he felt like his dream wasn't just a dream, it was a possibility. Ethan's heart soared as Brady gave him a nod of approval. But the murmurs among the players and coaches hadn't disappeared entirely. Skepticism lingered like a faint shadow over the field. While some clapped politely, others exchanged glances that seemed to say, it was just a lucky break. Brady turned to his team. "All right, let's get back to work. Ethan, thanks for the demonstration. Keep dreaming big, kid." For Ethan, it wasn't enough. Sure, the play had worked, but he wanted to prove more than just the mechanics of the switch. He wanted to prove he belonged. "Mr. Brady," Ethan called out, stopping the quarterback in his tracks. "Can I try one more time? I think I can make it even better." Brady raised an eyebrow. The players groaned, a few muttering under their breath. "Come on, Tom," one of the linemen said. "We've got drills to run." Brady studied Ethan, noting the determination in his eyes. The kid didn't just want to be seen, he wanted to prove himself. It was a look Brady had seen in his own reflection countless times. "All right, one more time," Brady said. "But after this, we get back to practice." Ethan didn't waste a second. He huddled with Brady and a few players, explaining the adjustments he wanted to make. This time, the play included an extra misdirection, a subtle movement designed to draw the defense even further off balance. "Are you sure about this?" Brady asked, skeptical but intrigued. Ethan nodded. "Positive." The players lined up again, their postures tense with anticipation. The air was thick with expectation, the kind that comes before something extraordinary or catastrophic. Ethan barked out the commands, his voice stronger this time. The snap came, and the play unfolded like clockwork. The defenders bid hard on the fake handoff, completely missing the lateral. Brady sprinted to the end zone with ease, untouched by the defense. This time, the silence that followed wasn't one of doubt, it was one of awe. "Okay," Travis said, his tone begrudging but impressed. That was legit. Even the coaches, who had been watching from the sidelines with folded arms, seemed to soften. One of them, a grizzled veteran named Coach Harris, approached Brady. "You might want to keep this one in the back pocket," he said with a smirk. Despite the praise, not everyone was convinced. As Ethan walked off the field, his chest puffed with pride, he overheard a group of players talking in hushed tones. "Sure, it worked here," one said, "but that's because we weren't expecting it. Try that in a real game, and it's toast." Ethan's smile faltered. The words stung, but they didn't extinguish his determination. If anything, they fueled it. Brady noticed the shift in Ethan's expression. He crouched down to meet the boy's eye level. "Hey," he said quietly. "You're going to hear a lot of people doubt you. It happens to all of us. But you've got something most people don't." "What's that?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Heart," Brady replied. "The kind that makes people take notice. Don't lose that." Just as Ethan was about to leave, Coach Harris called out. "Hold on, kid. You've got a good play, but football isn't just about fancy moves. It's about grit, endurance, and teamwork. You think you've got what it takes?" Ethan turned back, his chin lifting slightly. "Yes, sir," he said, the confidence returning to his voice. "All right then," Harris said, motioning to a group of players. "Let's see how you handle yourself in a real challenge." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean, you want me to play?" Harris smirked. "Not quite. But let's see if you can keep up." The players set up a series of drills, sprints, agility tests, and passing exercises. Ethan's small frame and inexperience were immediately apparent, but he attacked each challenge with relentless determination. Sweat poured down his face as he sprinted back and forth across the field. His arms burned from the repeated throws and catches. But he never stopped, never asked for a break. By the time the drills ended, Ethan was visibly exhausted, but his resolve hadn't wavered. The players, who had started the drills with amused smirks, now looked at him with a hint of respect. "You've got guts, kid," Travis said, clapping him on the back. Coach Harris nodded. "You're rough around the edges, but I'll give you this: you don't quit." Brady approached, handing Ethan a water bottle. "You did good out there," he said. Ethan looked up at him, his face flushed but beaming. "Thank you, Mr. Brady. I just wanted to prove I'm serious." Brady chuckled. "I think you've done that. But remember, proving yourself isn't just a one-time thing. It's something you do every day, on and off the field." As the sun began to set over the stadium, Ethan lingered near the edge of the field, watching the players resume their practice. His body ached, and his clothes were drenched with sweat, but he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Brady walked over, his silhouette cutting an imposing figure against the fading light. "You know," he said, "when I was your age, I never thought I'd make it this far. People doubted me every step of the way. Even when I got to the NFL, they said I wouldn't last. But I didn't let that stop me." Ethan looked up at him, soaking in every word. "The trick isn't just about having talent," Brady continued. "It's about believing in yourself, even when no one else does. Keep that in mind, and you'll go far." As Ethan left the stadium that evening, clutching the football that now felt lighter in his hands, he knew this wasn't the end of his journey. It was just the beginning. He glanced back at the field one last time, the image of his idol etched in his mind. One day, he thought, I'll be out there for real. The doubts, the whispers, the challenges, they didn't scare him anymore. They only made him stronger. And somewhere inside the stadium, Tom Brady watched the boy leave, a small smile on his face. He saw something in Ethan, a reflection of the same fire that had driven him to greatness. The air in the training room grew heavy with anticipation. Ethan stood there, football tucked under his arm, his small frame overshadowed by the towering figures of professional athletes. Yet his voice carried a confidence far beyond his years. Brady crossed his arms and tilted his head, intrigued. "All right, kid. Let's see if this works. Travis, help him out." Travis, a veteran wide receiver, stepped forward with a skeptical grin. "You want me to run your play, little man?" Ethan nodded firmly. "I'll need you and 2 defenders. The setup is everything." The group moved to the field, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the freshly cut grass. A small crowd of players and coaches gathered, their curiosity piqued. Ethan's presence had already become the talk of the day, and now, they were about to witness whether this kid's so-called impossible play was more than just big talk. Ethan laid out the positions, guiding each player like a seasoned coach. "Travis, you'll cut right on the snap, but fake a stumble. Defender 1 will bite on that. Brady, you fake a throw down the center. Then, as you turn, I'll hand it off for a backward lateral. Wait, you'll handle the ball?" Brady asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, sir," Ethan said with a determined nod. "It's all about timing. Trust me." The whistle blew, and the play began. Travis sprinted, stumbled convincingly, and the defender shifted toward him. Brady executed the fake throw flawlessly, drawing attention to the middle of the field. Ethan darted into position, the ball exchanged hands seamlessly in the lateral. But the final step, the lightning-quick pass back to Brady, didn't land. The ball bounced off the quarterback's fingertips, rolling to the ground. A collective groan rippled through the spectators. Ethan's heart sank, but only for a moment. He jogged over to Brady, who knelt to pick up the ball. "It was too fast," Brady said, his tone neutral. "I can adjust," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "We'll get it next time." Brady stared at the boy, impressed by his resilience. "All right, let's run it again." As the group reset, Ethan noticed something critical. The defenders had started anticipating the lateral. He walked over to Brady and whispered something, gesturing toward the defenders' positions. Brady listened, nodding slowly. "You sure about this?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said. "It's about misdirection. They're looking at the wrong person." This time, the play began with an added wrinkle. Instead of Ethan delivering the lateral, he acted as a decoy, running wide as if he were taking the ball. The defenders, conditioned by the first attempt, bid hard on the fake. Meanwhile, Brady smoothly passed the ball back to Travis, who had recovered from his fake stumble and was now wide open downfield. The crowd erupted as Travis caught the pass and sprinted into the end zone. Cheers and laughter filled the field as Travis jogged back, shaking his head in disbelief. "Kid, where did you even come up with this stuff?" Ethan shrugged, a shy grin spreading across his face. "I just think about what would trick me if I were on defense." Brady chuckled. "You've got instincts, kid. Rare ones." But the real moment of validation came when Coach Harris, who had been quietly observing from the sidelines, approached with a slow clap. "Well, I'll be," he said. "That's a smart play. Risky, but smart." Ethan's grin widened. For the first time that day, he felt like he truly belonged. Not everyone was impressed, though. As Ethan celebrated, he overheard a few murmurs from the sidelines. "Yeah, it worked here, but this is practice," one player muttered. "Put that kid on a real field, and he'd get crushed." Ethan's excitement dimmed slightly. He turned toward the voices, his fists tightening around the football. He didn't say anything, but the doubt hung in the air like a storm cloud. Brady noticed the shift in Ethan's demeanor. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Don't let it get to you," he said. "Every great idea starts with someone doubting it. The question is, do you believe in it?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I do." "Then that's all that matters." As the day wore on, Ethan stayed on the sidelines, absorbing everything. He watched the team run drills, noting their precision and teamwork. But something was bothering him. He approached Brady during a break. "Mr. Brady, do you think my play could really work in a game?" Brady looked at him thoughtfully. "It's a good play, Ethan. But a play is only as good as the people running it. What makes football work isn't just strategy, it's trust. You've got to believe in your team as much as they believe in you." Ethan nodded, digesting the words. "So, if I wanted to make this play even better, I'd have to think about how the team would use it, not just me." "Exactly," Brady said, smiling. "Football isn't about being the hero. It's about making everyone around you better." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Brady gathered the team for a final practice session. He turned to Ethan. "How about one more run of the switch? But this time, I want you to call the adjustments." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean, like I'm the quarterback?" Brady grinned. "Exactly. Show us what you've got." Ethan hesitated for only a second before stepping onto the field. The players looked at him, some still skeptical, others now fully invested. He took a deep breath and started barking commands, mimicking the confidence he'd seen in Brady all day. "Travis, fake wide. Harris, cut left. Brady, you'll be the decoy." The snap came, and the play unfolded beautifully. Every adjustment Ethan had called worked flawlessly, ending with a touchdown pass that left the crowd roaring. As the team dispersed, Ethan sat on the edge of the field, gazing at the empty stands. Brady joined him, sitting down with a sigh. "You've got something special, kid," Brady said. "But remember, football is a long game. Plays don't make legends, dedication does." Ethan nodded, gripping the football tightly. "I'll work harder," he said. "I'll prove I can do this for real." Brady smiled. "I believe you." In that moment, Ethan realized something important. The impossible wasn't just about a single play or a single day. It was about the journey, and his was only beginning. Ethan's excitement from running the play was still fresh, but Brady's words lingered in his mind. Football wasn't just about the play, it was about the team, the trust, the countless hours of hard work. He watched as the professional athletes moved into more rigorous drills, their discipline evident in every step. Ethan sat quietly on the sidelines, replaying the earlier moments in his head. He was proud, but doubt still lingered. Could he, a 9-year-old, really belong in this world? Brady noticed Ethan's silence and approached him. "You okay, kid?" Ethan nodded but hesitated before speaking. "Mr. Brady, do you think I'm just lucky? Or do you think I really have what it takes?" Brady knelt, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Ethan, talent gets you noticed, but hard work keeps you in the game. Today, you showed talent. If you want to go further, you'll need more than that. Are you ready for the next step?" Ethan nodded eagerly, determination replacing doubt. "I am." Brady smiled, then turned to Coach Harris. "Coach, what do you think about putting Ethan through some of our mental drills?" Harris raised an eyebrow. "Mental drills? You think he's ready for that?" Brady chuckled. "Why not? He's got the heart. Let's see if he's got the focus." Ethan's curiosity piqued. "Mental drills? Like thinking about plays?" Brady shook his head. "Not just thinking. Reacting. Football is as much a mental game as it is physical. You've got to see the field, anticipate moves, and stay one step ahead of everyone else." Harris pulled out a tablet with a simulation program, showing a series of plays. "All right, Ethan. Watch this. You've got 5 seconds to call out the right adjustment for the offense. Ready?" Ethan nodded, leaning in as the simulation began. The first play was simple, a classic defensive setup. Ethan quickly called out, "Run up the middle." "Good," Harris said. "Now let's speed it up." As the simulations increased in difficulty, Ethan found himself struggling. The defenses became more complex, the options harder to identify. Sweat formed on his brow as Harris barked commands, pushing him to think faster. "Clock's ticking, Ethan," Harris said. "What's the call?" Ethan hesitated, unsure. Screen pass." The simulation ended with a defensive interception. Harris tapped the tablet, resetting it. "Wrong choice. You missed the safety creeping in on the left." Ethan's shoulders slumped. He wasn't used to failing, and the weight of the moment felt heavy. Brady stepped in. "Hey, don't let it get to you. We all make mistakes. The key is to learn from them. Now, take a deep breath and try again." This time, Ethan focused not just on the obvious movements but on the subtler details: the shift in the defensive line, the position of the safeties. He called out, "Quick slant to the right." The simulation ended in a successful completion. Harris grinned. "Now you're getting it." Ethan's confidence began to rebuild. Each correct call fueled his determination, and soon he was anticipating defensive movements with surprising accuracy. Brady clapped him on the back. "That's what I'm talking about. See the field, trust your instincts, and don't rush. Football isn't just a game of speed, it's a game of precision." As Ethan's mental drills continued, more players gathered around, watching the young boy hold his own in a professional setting. The skeptics who had doubted him earlier began to soften, their comments shifting from dismissive to impressed. "Not bad for a kid," one linebacker said, nodding appreciatively. "I'll admit," another added, "he's got good instincts. Better than some rookies I've seen." Ethan overheard the compliments and couldn't help but smile. For the first time, he felt like he was earning their respect not just as a fan, but as a peer. As the drills wound down, Coach Harris approached Ethan with a serious expression. "All right, kid. You've shown you've got brains and heart. But now I want to see if you've got endurance. You think you're ready?" Ethan straightened up. "Yes, sir." Harris pointed to a series of cones set up in a zigzag pattern. "This is an agility drill. You'll run through the cones, grab the ball at the end, and sprint back. Think you can handle it?" Ethan nodded, his nerves bubbling under the surface. The whistle blew, and Ethan took off. His small legs carried him through the cones, his focus sharp. He reached the ball, scooped it up, and sprinted back, his breath coming in gasps. When he crossed the finish line, Harris checked his stopwatch. "Not bad," he said. "But can you do it again?" Ethan ran the drill again. And again. Each time, his energy waned, his movements slowing. By the fifth run, his legs felt like lead, and his lungs burned. Harris stood over him as he crouched, hands on his knees. "This is where champions are made, kid. Anyone can run when they're fresh. Let's see if you can dig deep when it counts." Ethan looked up, sweat dripping from his face. His eyes met Brady's, who gave him an encouraging nod. With a burst of determination, Ethan stood tall. "One more," he said, his voice trembling but firm. The final run was grueling. Ethan's feet stumbled, his arms flailed, but he didn't stop. When he crossed the finish line, the team erupted in cheers, clapping, and shouting words of encouragement. Harris smiled for the first time that day. "You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that." Brady crouched beside Ethan, who was sprawled on the grass, catching his breath. "You okay?" Ethan grinned weakly. "I think I need a nap." Brady laughed, patting him on the shoulder. "You earned it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the field in golden light, Ethan sat with Brady on the sidelines. The two shared a quiet moment, the chaos of the day fading into a calm sense of accomplishment. "You know," Brady said, breaking the silence, "I didn't think I'd be spending my day with a 9-year-old teaching me a new play." Ethan chuckled. "And I didn't think I'd get to teach my hero something new." Brady smiled, his gaze distant. "Keep that fire, Ethan. You're going to need it. But if you keep working like you did today, there's no limit to what you can achieve." Ethan nodded, his heart full. He wasn't just a kid with a dream anymore, he was a kid with a plan. Ethan stood on the field, gripping the oversized football with trembling hands. The lights from the stadium bathed the turf in a glow that felt both intimidating and exhilarating. Around him, Brady's teammates loomed like giants, their skeptical eyes scanning the young boy. Brady clapped his hands. "All right, everyone, listen up. We're running Ethan's play. Defense, no holding back. Treat him like you would anyone else. Ethan, this is your moment. Show us what you've got." The words sent a jolt through Ethan. This wasn't just a friendly test. This was it. The players lined up, their powerful stances a stark contrast to Ethan's small frame. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting to Brady, who gave him a reassuring nod. The whistle blew. Ethan took off, the ball cradled tightly in his arms. His feet moved instinctively, following the intricate pattern he had practiced countless times. Step, pivot, spin, each motion was deliberate yet fluid. The defense charged, their massive frames closing in like a tidal wave. Ethan's heart raced, but he didn't panic. Instead, he executed the play's first surprise move, a sudden fake pass that sent two defenders stumbling in the wrong direction. Gasps erupted from the sidelines. Even Brady's stoic expression cracked slightly. "Keep going," Brady shouted. A linebacker barreled toward Ethan, his arms outstretched and his speed overwhelming. For a split second, it seemed impossible for Ethan to escape. But the boy anticipated the move, sidestepping with a precision that left the defender grasping at air. The crowd of onlookers grew louder. Coaches and players exchanged wide-eyed glances. "Did you see that?" one muttered. Brady smirked. "I did." The next phase of the play was the riskiest part. It required timing and audacity, qualities not typically associated with 9-year-olds. Ethan slowed, pretending to hesitate, drawing the defenders closer. "Is he stalling?" one of Brady's teammates called out. But Ethan wasn't stalling. He was baiting them. In a sudden burst of energy, Ethan spun in the opposite direction, flicking the ball backward with precision. It wasn't just a pass, it was a perfectly calculated lateral to an imaginary teammate that disoriented the defense. The defenders hesitated, unsure whether to chase Ethan or the ball. That split-second confusion was all Ethan needed. He darted forward, breaking through the gap. The end zone was in sight, but one last defender stood in his path, a towering cornerback with arms like tree trunks. Ethan's chest heaved as he charged forward, adrenaline masking the ache in his legs. "Come on, Ethan." Brady's voice boomed from the sidelines. As the defender lunged, Ethan did something no one expected. He dove not just to avoid the tackle, but to glide under the defender's reach, his body skimming the turf. The ball crossed the goal line. For a moment, there was silence. Then an eruption. Cheers, claps, laughter filled the air as the team ran toward Ethan, who lay sprawled in the end zone, clutching the ball tightly. Brady jogged over, a rare smile lighting up his face. He extended a hand to Ethan, pulling him up. "Kid," he said, his voice warm but firm, "you just made history in your own way." Ethan beamed, his cheeks red with exertion and pride. "So, did it work?" Brady chuckled, ruffling Ethan's hair. "Work? That wasn't just a play. That was genius." The teammates who had doubted Ethan moments ago now surrounded him, offering fist bumps and pats on the back. "You've got moves," one of them said, shaking his head in disbelief. Coach Harris crossed his arms, a rare grin on his face. "All right, I'll admit it. That was something special." As the excitement died down, Brady turned to the team. "Let this be a lesson to all of us. Never underestimate someone because of their size, age, or background. This kid just reminded us what it means to play with heart." The players nodded, their expressions a mix of respect and reflection. Ethan, still clutching the ball, looked up at Brady. "Does this mean I passed the test?" Brady crouched, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Kid, you didn't just pass. You taught us all something today. Keep that fire, and you'll go far." Word of the moment spread quickly. By the next day, clips of Ethan's play flooded social media. Fans and analysts alike couldn't stop talking about the impossible play. Headlines read, "9-year-old stuns NFL pros and Tom Brady's new protege." Ethan's schoolmates, who had once teased him for dreaming too big, now treated him like a celebrity. But Ethan remained humble, carrying the same determination that had brought him to Brady in the first place. Before leaving the stadium that day, Ethan turned to Brady one last time. "Thank you, Mr. Brady. For everything." Brady smiled. "You've got a bright future ahead, Ethan. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" Ethan asked. "Never stop proving them wrong." With that, Ethan walked off the field, the football still clutched in his hands, his dreams now larger than life. The cheers had barely settled when Coach Harris, arms crossed and a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, stepped forward. "All right, kid," he said, his voice cutting through the lingering applause. "You've impressed us, but one play doesn't make a champion. Let's see if you can handle a real challenge." Ethan's smile faltered for a moment, but his resolve returned just as quickly. "What kind of challenge?" he asked, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. Harris pointed to the far end of the field, where several drills had been set up. "We're running a scrimmage. Full speed, full contact. You're going to quarterback for the offense. Think you can manage?" Ethan's heart raced. A real scrimmage? Against professionals? But then he caught Brady's eye. The quarterback gave him a small nod of encouragement, and Ethan knew he couldn't back down now. "I'm ready," Ethan said, gripping the ball tightly. The players lined up, their towering frames casting long shadows over the field. Ethan stood behind the center, dwarfed by the linemen. The ball felt heavier in his hands now, the pressure mounting with every second. "Blue 42. Blue 42. Hut!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking slightly. The ball snapped, and chaos erupted around him. The defensive line surged forward, a wall of muscle and determination. Ethan backpedaled, scanning the field. His receivers darted left and right, their routes precise yet difficult to follow amidst the frenzy. A linebacker broke through the line, charging straight for Ethan. His instincts kicked in, and he spun out of the way just in time. The crowd watching from the sidelines let out a collective gasp as Ethan rolled to his right, keeping the play alive. Then he saw it, a receiver breaking free down the sideline. Without hesitation, Ethan planted his foot and launched the ball. It soared through the air, a perfect spiral, landing squarely in the receiver's hands. Touchdown! The field erupted once more, the players surrounding Ethan with cheers and pats on the back. But Coach Harris wasn't done. "Not bad," Harris said, though his tone remained stern. "But can you do it again?" Ethan nodded, already lining up for the next play. This time, the defense adjusted, doubling their efforts to stop him. The blitz came faster, the coverage tighter. Ethan's small frame darted through gaps, his eyes scanning the field with a focus far beyond his years. Each play brought new challenges. One moment, he was dodging tackles, the next, he was calling audibles, adjusting routes on the fly. He made mistakes, passes that missed their mark, decisions that led to sacks, but each time, he got back up, learning and improving. Brady watched from the sidelines, his arms crossed and a proud smile on his face. "Kid's got guts," he said to Harris. "Guts won't win championships," Harris replied, though even he couldn't hide the hint of admiration in his voice. Midway through the scrimmage, Ethan found himself in a critical situation, 3rd down, 10 yards to go, with the defense bearing down hard. The team was looking to him, the boy who was supposed to be just a novelty, for a solution. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling Brady's earlier advice, see the field. Trust your instincts. Shift left. Ethan shouted, motioning for his running back to move. Tight end, slant route. The ball snapped, and Ethan executed the play flawlessly. A quick fake handoff froze the linebackers just long enough for the tight end to break free. Ethan's pass zipped through the air, hitting the receiver in stride for a crucial 1st down. Brady clapped loudly, his voice carrying across the field. That's how you lead a team. By the time the scrimmage ended, Ethan had done more than hold his own. He had earned the respect of every player on that field. The same skeptics who had questioned his presence now approached him with nods of approval and words of encouragement. Kid's got something special, one lineman said, shaking his head. I didn't think I'd see a 9-year-old out here teaching us a thing or two, another joked, though his tone was sincere. Coach Harris approached Ethan last, his expression unreadable. All right, kid. You proved me wrong. You've got what it takes to hang with the pros at least for a day. Ethan grinned, his chest swelling with pride. Thank you, coach. As the players began to disperse, Brady pulled Ethan aside. You've done more today than most people twice your age could dream of, he said. But there's one more thing I need to know. Ethan tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his eyes. What's that? Why this play? Why today? Ethan hesitated, then took a deep breath. Because everyone told me it was impossible. My friends, my coach, even my parents said I couldn't do it. But when I saw you play, when I heard you say, prove them wrong, it made me believe I could. Brady's expression softened, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then he placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. You didn't just prove them wrong, kid. You inspired all of us. Including me. As the sun set over the field, casting long shadows across the turf, Ethan stood in the center, holding the football that had carried him through the most extraordinary day of his life. The stadium, once an intimidating giant, now felt like a second home. Brady knelt beside him, their heights finally even. Ethan, remember this day. Not because you met me, but because you showed yourself what's possible. Ethan nodded, his eyes shimmering with gratitude. I will, Mr. Brady. I promise. With that, Brady stood, the two walking off the field together, a living testament to the power of heart, determination, and the courage to dream big. The next morning, headlines across sports channels and social media platforms buzzed with Ethan's story. Phrases like the 9-year-old prodigy and Tom Brady's new protege dominated the news. Clips of his scrimmage, especially the iconic touchdown play, had gone viral overnight. The small-town boy who had once been teased for carrying a football too big for his hands was now a symbol of resilience. Interviews flooded in. Coaches from across the country wanted to know more about him. Back in his hometown, things had changed almost instantly. Ethan's classmates, who once rolled their eyes at his football talk, now clamored to sit with him during lunch. His teachers beamed with pride, using his story as an example of perseverance in their lessons. If Ethan can dream big and make it happen, his math teacher said one day, what's stopping the rest of us? A few days after the scrimmage, Ethan received a package in the mail. Inside was a Patriots jersey with his name printed on the back, along with a handwritten note. Ethan. The field is yours again tomorrow if you're ready. Tom. Ethan's jaw dropped. Was this real? His parents, who had been skeptical of his ambitions at first, now looked at him with pride and awe. Guess you'd better pack your gear, his dad said, ruffling his hair. The next day, Ethan found himself back at the stadium, surrounded by the very players who had once doubted him. But this time, there were no skeptical glances or whispered jokes. Instead, there were fist bumps, high fives, and even a nickname, Mini Brady. Brady took Ethan under his wing during practice, guiding him not just in football but in life. Between drills, they'd sit on the sidelines, talking about more than just plays. What's the most important part of being a quarterback? Ethan asked one day, sweat dripping down his brow. Brady leaned back, thinking. It's not the arm strength or the speed, he said. It's leadership. The ability to make people believe in something bigger than themselves. That's what wins games, Ethan. And you've already got that in you. Ethan soaked up every word, scribbling notes in a small journal he carried everywhere now. Ethan's story didn't just resonate with Brady and the Patriots. It became a beacon of hope for young athletes everywhere. Kids who had once been told they were too small or not talented enough found courage in Ethan's journey. Schools began hosting Prove Them Wrong sports days, where students could showcase their unique skills without fear of judgment. Ethan, invited as a guest speaker to some of these events, always said the same thing: it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you're willing to go. Even Ethan's former naysayers found themselves inspired. His school's football coach, who had once doubted Ethan's abilities, pulled him aside one day. "I owe you an apology," he admitted. "I didn't see what you had in you. But I do now." Ethan smiled. "That's okay, coach. Sometimes you've just got to show people instead of telling them." The coach nodded, impressed not just by Ethan's talent but by his humility. "How about we start building the team around you next season? I think you've earned that." For Brady, Ethan's presence had sparked something he hadn't felt in years: a renewed passion for the game. "You get so caught up in contracts, stats, and pressure," he confided to a reporter. "But then a kid like Ethan comes along and reminds you why you started playing in the first place. It's about the love of the game." During one practice, Brady called the team together. "Ethan's not just here to learn from us," he said. "We're here to learn from him too. He's proof that the heart of a champion doesn't come with an age limit." Ethan's journey began changing the culture within the team as well. Younger players, who often struggled to find their place among veterans, found themselves encouraged to speak up and try new things. "If Ethan can walk in here and show us what he's got," one rookie said, "why can't we?" Brady made it a point to create space for every player, regardless of experience, to contribute. The result? A more unified team, one that played with heart instead of just skill. It wasn't long before Ethan's story reached even bigger audiences. He was invited to halftime shows, featured in commercials, and even got to throw the first pitch at a Red Sox game. But despite the fame, Ethan remained grounded. "I'm just a kid who loves football," he told a reporter. "And I got lucky because someone gave me a chance." Brady laughed when he saw the interview later. "Luck," he said, shaking his head. "Kid, you made your own luck." Back in Foxborough, the energy around the Patriots felt different. Fans who had once criticized the team for being too serious now saw a new side. Practices became open events, with kids like Ethan invited to watch and even participate in drills. Brady started a new initiative, the Prove Them Wrong Camp, where young athletes from all backgrounds could train and showcase their skills. The first camp saw over 100 kids, each with a story of resilience and a dream to chase. Ethan, of course, was the star guest. 1 year later, Ethan was invited to participate in the Patriots' preseason game as an honorary team member. Dressed in full gear, he ran out onto the field with the team, the roar of the crowd echoing in his ears. Brady handed him the ball during warm-ups. "You ready for one more play?" he asked. Ethan grinned. "Always." As the crowd watched, Ethan took the field for a ceremonial snap. He executed the play perfectly, just as he had a year before. The fans went wild, chanting his name. By the end of the game, Ethan wasn't just a fan anymore. He was part of the Patriots family. Brady made sure of it. "This kid is going places," he told the media afterward. "And I'll be cheering him on every step of the way." For Ethan, it was more than a dream come true, it was the start of something bigger. He had proven to himself, and to the world, that no dream was too big. And in doing so, he became not just a story, but a legend in his own right. The end? Not quite. The journey had only just begun. Years had passed since that fateful day on the practice field, and Ethan had grown into something he never imagined as a young boy. Now, as a rising football star, he stood on the brink of greatness. He had achieved everything he once dreamed of and more. The spotlight followed him everywhere he went, but what stayed with him, even through all the fame, was a single moment. A moment when one person chose to believe in him. When reporters asked him to reflect on that life-changing day, Ethan would smile and say, "All I needed was for someone to believe in me." The press conferences, the applause, the interviews, all of it was just a backdrop to the truth he held dear. It wasn't about the records, the touchdowns, or the MVP awards. It was about the small, seemingly insignificant moment when Tom Brady looked at him not as a child or a dreamer but as someone worth listening to. That was the moment that changed everything. For Ethan, it had never been about proving others wrong. It was about proving to himself that a dream, no matter how big, was worth chasing. And that the best way to chase it was by taking a chance and putting everything on the line. Ethan's story had a ripple effect, spreading far beyond football. People all over the country, from small towns to big cities, began to realize that talent wasn't just about being the biggest or the fastest, it was about having heart. It was about showing up, no matter the odds, and putting everything you had into what you believed in. Children everywhere, once told they were too young or too small to succeed, began to see themselves in Ethan. They began to believe in their own possibilities. Every time someone asked him about his story, Ethan made sure to share one key lesson: it's not about where you start, but about where you choose to go from there. And every time a young athlete stepped onto a field, no matter how big or small, they carried that lesson with them. They carried the reminder that if a 9-year-old kid could stand up to the world and prove them wrong, so could they. For Ethan, the years of working with his idol, Tom Brady, had taught him more than football. Through Brady, he learned about leadership, sacrifice, and how to carry the weight of others' expectations. But above all, Ethan learned what it meant to give others a chance, the same chance Brady had given him all those years ago. Tom Brady had not just taught Ethan how to throw a perfect pass or read a defense. He had taught him what it meant to believe in someone, even when the world didn't. To give someone a moment, to see their potential when others saw only their limits. In that lesson, Ethan found a responsibility to pay it forward, to give others the same chance Brady had given him. And he did. Ethan became a mentor to young athletes, many of whom had never seen someone like him, a player who had been overlooked, underestimated, and yet had still succeeded. He spoke to them about resilience, about how to handle failure, and how to keep going even when the odds seemed impossible. His words were never just about football. They were about life. It was easy to forget how far Ethan had come, especially when people only saw him as the kid who'd made it. The truth was, Ethan wasn't just the product of his talent or his determination. He was the product of a single chance. A chance taken by Tom Brady. A chance that could have been dismissed. A chance that could have gone unnoticed. But instead, it was taken wholeheartedly. That one moment of belief, that one nod of encouragement, had set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. And it wasn't just Brady who gave Ethan that chance. It was everyone who saw the spark in him, even when it was hidden beneath the surface. Ethan's family had always supported his dreams, never once telling him to stop. His teachers had given him the space to grow, even when his mind wandered into the world of sports. And his community? They had cheered him on, even when the world outside didn't believe in small-town kids with big dreams. All of them had played a part in giving Ethan that single chance to prove the world wrong. And now, Ethan knew that his job was to keep that chance alive for others. As Ethan stood on the field, ready to play his biggest game yet, he thought back to the moment that had started it all. The boy who had walked onto the field with nothing but a football, a dream, and a belief that he could do something extraordinary, was now a symbol of what could happen when you took a chance on someone. It wasn't just the game that mattered. It was the message that it carried with it, that every child, every person, had the ability to do the impossible, if only given the chance to try. And that's what Ethan had learned through everything he'd experienced. Sometimes, the biggest legends weren't made on the field, they were sparked by a moment, a dream, and someone who was willing to take a chance. Looking up into the stands, where his family and friends sat, Ethan felt the weight of everything that had happened. He knew that the applause, the recognition, and the victories weren't what defined him. What defined him was that one person who had believed in him, and how, in turn, he had learned to believe in others. That night, after the game, as Ethan reflected on his journey, he thought about all the people who had ever believed in him and how they had made a difference. And then it hit him, the real legacy of a person wasn't their achievements, but how they made others feel. Ethan didn't just want to be remembered for his touchdowns or his victories. He wanted to be remembered as someone who had opened the door for others, someone who had believed in the unseen, in the underdog, and in the dreamer. Just as Tom Brady had done for him. And that was the true power of a single chance, the ability to pass it on. To create a ripple that would continue long after the game ended, inspiring generations to come. To give someone else the chance to step onto the field, with nothing but a dream, and a belief that they too could do the impossible. As Ethan spoke those final words during an interview years later, with the championship trophy sitting beside him, his face held the same sincerity as the young boy who had first walked into that stadium all those years ago. He was still the same kid with the same passion. But now, he understood what it truly meant to be a legend. It wasn't about being the best. It wasn't about proving the doubters wrong or collecting trophies. It was about giving someone else the same chance to shine. And in that, Ethan found his true legacy. One built not on the field, but in the hearts of those who had been inspired by him to chase their dreams, no matter how big or small. Because sometimes, all it takes is a single chance to change the world.